I was that was loud. Mainly focusing on. I was trying to learn a lot of just improv and
Hmm.
focusing on pentatonic stuff
Yeah.
and strictly about the guitar. And then I was working on some more theory stuff and doing a bit on the piano. And then it was good because I also teach
Right.
like
Yeah.
at a center, so it was good to sort of have a break because I think they do breaks like alongside school term slash
Yeah.
uni terms, and it was good to sort of have a break to sort of collect some stuff and sort of organize everything. Yeah.
So you said you were working on because like if the last lesson's anything to go by, people will still be dribbling and turn fast. Um, yeah. So when you say you've been working on pentatonic improv, what are you doing with it? How are you working on that?
Mainly going over chord progressions and specific, and especially with the inversions as well.
Right.
Um,
So you kind of doing half triads, half pentatonic.
Yeah, because
That's a
with
good
the
place to be.
pentatonics, I'm trying to sort of make transitioning between them easier. So I'll maybe choose, like if I had a chord progression, I'd choose maybe three that were next to each other and I'd try to go between them. Then I'd move up, try three different
Could you
ones.
like tilt your camera down and show me?
Yeah. I'll just get a pic, sorry.
Your, hold on. Your camera is totally on top of mounted like on top of a monitor, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know.
Okay. Um, so like at one of the last lessons, I said that there's two real ways of thinking about transitioning in pentatonics. And you're doing like the slide transition, which
Yeah.
is a good one. Like everyone uses it a lot. One that I think is worth cultivating. Um, it definitely requires a little bit more like practice to do it. Is skipping a box.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you do like, what's a good key for you?
Um, C, A minor.
So cool. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So like if we start here in box five, right?
Yeah.
Um, if we come up on the same string, skipping the next box and go up to box two, we'll continue the scale.
Yeah. Okay.
All
So,
right. So it becomes this kind of like seamless transition. It's like you didn't stop in the position,
yeah.
but you can cover a lot of ground on the neck doing that.
Yeah.
Have a word. Have a will.
Cool. And another thing I'm not very good at is remembering specifically numbering them. I sort of just remember like when you say like box five, I just sort of know the shape, but not what to call it. Either
Yeah.
that or I use the cage like to call it by the chord it goes with.
Yeah. I
So
mean, look, like all of those kind of numberings and everything, that's only convenient when you're talking to each other.
yeah,
If you like as a teacher, it's worth developing the vernacular
yeah,
because it's really nice to have something solid you constantly call one thing for
yeah,
a student. Um, so that kind of consistency is nice. I prefer the box numberings to the cage numberings because the cage numberings imply a deeper connection than I think you end up understanding them as. Um, for example, right, if we were playing on this chord, right, A minor nine, um, this is an E-shaped chord, right? So you'd go right, box one
yeah,
pentatonic, right, and that'll work. Sounds all right. But if you associate box three pentatonic with it, that's the D shape. Now you'll actually be playing minor nines. You'll be playing the extensions on the chord.
yeah,
So that's kind of like a minor nine pentatonic box, if you will.
yeah,
Um, so you're hitting those extensions, right? Like 9 7. You're missing the third. You're replacing it with the nine in that instance. Um, but it means that if you think of your pentatonics as actually sets of intervals, then you end up changing which ones you associate with which chord and for what reason.
yeah,
Like if you take this chord, right, A shape, we'd all go, okay, A shape's this box five position. And that's great if what you want is that kind of country, very, very sweet major flavor. But if you associate it actually with this note and box four pentatonic, no, I've just done that wrong. No, that was right. you get major 7 flat 5,
Yeah.
right? Like, so there's a lot of different ways of reappropriating these pentatonic boxes to
Yeah.
give you a lot of interesting sounds that are kind of locked off to you if you think of them exclusively in those cage terms. I think the cage terms are great for explaining to you like the basic connection.
Yeah.
You know, like box 4 to C major. And it's like, yeah, if we do that, we'll get this kind of like really happy standard major scale kind of sound, which is very nice. You know, like we are definitely going to use a lot of that, but that's not where the connections stop.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason I like the boxes is because it doesn't imply anything. It's just like, remember this fingering shape? Yeah,
Yeah.
box this. That's the fingering shape, and we're going to move that around into different places.
Yeah.
Similarly, like too, if we do this and we play our box 4, we end up doing a major 7th sound. If we do box 1, we're doing Lydian. Um, so like there's a lot of interesting ways of kind of repurposing your pentatonics. So one of the things I wanted to get into, kind of probably midway, halfway through, maybe the end of this term.
Yeah.
Um, and it all comes back to what I'm doing this lesson, which is focusing on thinking about your intervals and the thing you are in the chord more. Because then it all becomes very easily understandable. And there's kind of less rules than you think there are. It's like, you know, this is your triad, and literally every note around it will work at some point. What you've got to do is filter out where they're likely to work. So more on that when that all starts. So when you say you're playing over a chord progression, did you mean you were changing the scale with it, or you're just kind of you're still like sitting in A minor, but you're playing C A minor F G?
Yeah, sort of, because and that was another thing I was trying to do. I was trying to change sort of what sort of box or what scale I was playing while it was shifting through the
Mm-hmm.
chords, but I found that a bit difficult. So I mainly just stuck to whatever felt sort of natural throughout the progression, because I found it just a bit difficult to on the
Bit of
fly while I'm
processing.
switching chords to change where I'm at. Sort of, yeah, just found that a bit
So
difficult.
how did you do? Can you give me a demo of what that looked like? What you were trying for?
So just for example, if I was going C to E, then I'd try to play in
Yeah.
C major and then try to go to if it was multiple chords, I just try to switch like what scale I'm playing between those. Like,
But can you show me how you're doing that? There's lots of different ways of approaching that.
yeah,
Like for example, right? 1 4 5. I can play box 2 on all of them.
yeah, because that's what
Right?
I was trying to do. I was trying to play sort of the same box, just over it, starting on a different note. So
Yeah.
say if it was C F G, just starting on each
Yeah,
of
so
those.
one of the things that is interesting about that is it's very, very low taxation on your brain,
Yeah,
you know, which is lovely. It's not always the best way of doing it though. I think a better way of doing it would be if you're going to say like C, just do your chord progression with triads to F and then to G, C. And I'm only worrying about 3 strings, right? I think everyone tries to jump straight into like good music.
yeah,
And what we need to do is make some boring crap first. And lots and lots and lots of it. Like all we need to do is tick the box of did I change the scale? Did I mark my chord tones? And if I do that, again, one of the things we're going to do in this lesson, take your triad, you build the pentatonic off it,
yeah,
right? All right. So what you might do is start with that. Sorry, I went with the wrong short. All right. And
yeah,
then you can start worrying about making melodies out of it. Now, the thing I would say to make melodies out of it, just thinking in this tiny little space, and I would probably start with just 2 chords, 3 is probably too far, is targeting the ones that are really close to one another. So if we have here C
yeah,
and here F, that semitone change, that's going to be really descriptive and really powerful to kind of latch onto because it's a semitone shift. You know, you should know that we're going from the major third to the root.
hmm,
All right, that's another thing you should constantly try to think about. But if we try that, you really hit those chord tones when the chords come up.
Yeah.
Um, and focusing on a small range will help you a lot more. And then I would do that in a few places on the neck. And what you'll find is that you'll start drawing the pentatonic connection. You know, when I am playing on a C triad, I am playing C pentatonic, right? You know, and when I'm on the F triad, I am playing F pentatonic. One of the problems that I found really early on was with this whole changing key thing, is it's like you try to imagine it all at once.
Yeah.
You know, these days I even think a 2-octave 6-string shape is too big. You know, if I'm only on this chord for one beat, it's like there's this millisecond, 10 millisecond or something
Yeah.
delay of me trying to come up with a shape that then pushes it back further. And what I found was when I was focusing on big patterns, I was less melodic. Because it's like the brain power goes into, oh, here's the shape, and then your hands follow the shape pattern. Whereas what I think the better thing to do is target tones from the chord, so you're using your ear to direct them. You know?
Yeah.
So some exercises that help with that are like, there's a cool cycle fifths exercise that I probably will give you guys at some point. Where is everyone? It's 10 past. We have to start the lesson in a sec. Yeah, a cool cycle fifths exercise is take any triad, right? Here's a triad. What you do is you keep going up and down that until you want to change chords. Then you play the 7, flat 7. You take that flat 7 and you go down a semitone. Now I'm on the 3rd of the next chord. So you've got to keep thinking about how your shape changes. That's the flat 7. Go to the 3rd. Here's the 3rd of the next chord. Right? And no matter where you go on the neck, the idea is you kind of freely allow yourself to accept where this is taking you.
Yeah.
And you always know that, right, if I've played that flat 7, that's the 3rd, so it's got to be the 3rd of an arpeggio shape.
Yeah.
And what I find is when I run out of room and I come down here, you've got to find a way of coming back up. Right? And there's lots of different ways of doing that. Like at the moment, what we're doing is targeting 3rds and 7ths, right? You find the 7th, you go down a step, and then you're on the 3rd. And it's really driving home, this is where the flat 7 is, this is where the 3rd is. It's also quite musical. It's quite fun to go around the neck with. But that, I think, unlocks a little secret, which is what you're trying to do when you improvise is hear resolutions, is hear how the chord tones relate to one another. And the more you can focus in on exercises that drive that point home, the better and better your improv will be. So I'd say that in order to improve the stuff that you're working on, make your shape smaller. For now, don't go any bigger than 3 strings. And yeah, it will feel basic, you know, like, and that's okay. Like you gotta start somewhere. I would say go for basic and melodic, even if it sounds like a nursery rhyme. It's like, did it sound like music? If it sounded like music, your improv was successful. That doesn't mean that you have to toss out the chops and everything that you have been working on, you know, because that comes back because they're all licks that you know, you just haven't focused on the right thing with them.
Yeah.
You haven't focused on exactly why they sound and where they should be used. They kind of, it's almost like it's half in your ear, half in your fingers.
Yeah.
And when it's at that stage, it's a little unreliable. What you're looking for is being able to kind of like hum the chord changes. So other things that are worth doing is like establishing target tones inside of a chord progression. You know, you might take a cliche, right? And target 3rds. All right, they're all the 3rds from the chords. And you start like that as your melody. Make sure you can sing it. Ba, 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 ba. Then you go, okay, I'm on this note, and I've got to get to this note. I got 4 beats on each chord. Let's build a path, right? There we go. So you can see how like all I'm doing is just joining the dots. I'm saying I can go anywhere I like as long as the ones that I transition on
Yeah.
are the right ones. And that's going to really start focusing you in on the sound of what you're playing and how that relates back to the chord, which will improve your playing immensely. It's the one thing I continue to work on.
Yeah.
That I find keeps improving my playing. Um, and you can push those boundaries further and further. Like you don't always have to target thirds or fifths or whatever. You can target outrageous notes. You could try doing different scales across chords and things like that. But that's where it starts. Is just nice and basic. Choose some notes from the chords you're hearing.
Yeah.
Do it in a small area and target them. Also try that other exercise. So remember that one's triads to the seventh, go down a fret to the third. And that'll make you do cycle fourths the whole way. And honestly, a good game, it's a Rick Beato exercise. It's a good game where you just keep playing until you run out. And you can cover up and down the neck, and it's quite fun. Once you start getting it together, you learn that actually you can kind of push the direction you're moving in. Initially, it'll just be whatever comes out, because it'll just be kind of like discovering the neck. But then you get down here and you're like, well, I've got to go back up here, so I've got to get to the second octave of the chord. There's my 7. Right, so like you're constantly directing, oh, I've got to leap up to this next octave. So how do I get up to...
And with that, are you just moving in fourths or moving down? Like, what chord are you going to for the next one? Like after?
One, I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just thinking I'm targeting my 7th and my 3rd.
Okay.
But what we are doing is cycle fourths here, right? So it is a great exercise to actually also do the brain work and constantly say yourself the cycle fours. But that's not what I use the exercise for. For me, it was an exercise in total ear direction.
Yeah.
Like I have these very basic tools to work with. I have 4 notes. One of those notes I can only play if I'm playing in transition. If I play it early, then I have to transition.
Yeah.
Right? Because the dominant 7 just pushes that 5-1 perfect cadence. So if you need an extra note, you go to the major 7th until you want to transition.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly like that. And you work on that with all of your inversion shapes.
Right.
Right, so you're on the 3rd now. So
yeah.
what inversion has 3rd on top?
I'm brain blanking. Oh wait.
2nd inversion. Not quite. It's
yeah.
Right, it's the A shape, right? It's 2nd inversion. You can see how this recombines your theory information and helps reinforce it. You want to start thinking about that more and more and more. Okay, look, we are nearly 20 past, so like, I guess no one else is showing up. Yeah, cool stuff, man. Okay, real quick, I wanted to start with an exercise to kind of get us going. So I'm going to put a metronome on for 60 BPM. What you could do is mute your mic for a moment. So that way you can hear me, but I can't hear you, because that way you can play along with me. And we're going to start by doing C triads.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. All right, we're going to do a minute of it at 60 BPM. All right? This is one of those things where it's like, it's a good drill to do to make sure you know your neck, and it's a good refresher. I very rarely practice this specifically. And if I was going to practice it, I would probably practice it with some other affect. Like I might go, something else, or I might do leaping over. But just today, we'll go basic up and down. Alrighty, here be the metronome. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. I just want to double check I don't have some kind of like speed setting on that. For some reason today, yep, that's on normal. 60 BPM feels fast today.
Yeah.
Okay, so how'd you go with that? Know them well enough to keep up with that?
Yeah.
Okay, how about minor?
Probably not as well, but
Let's go over it. So first one, thirds on bottom, flatten it. Now, weirdly, I found that I've been doing this for the last two classes, doing this with fingerings using 4, 3, and 2. What am I doing? Are actually really comfortable and very consistent. It's a very kind of like jazz guy way of doing it. And I found that was a lot easier to do than trying to use
yeah.
upper fingers.
Yeah. Right. Oh.
So I'm using a par bar there. So
Okay.
E minor shape, you know.
And that one, what'd you do?
Well, what I'm doing is I think I'm keeping third finger always in the bass, right? Third finger is always on the bottom of the chord, which means that I have a finger that's rooted constantly against the neck, which means my hand's really stable.
Yeah. And that one.
Yeah. Okay, so this one I like the arpeggiation exercise too. By the way, that's cool. That clearly needs a bit more work. Like you want to look at that a bit more.
Yeah.
These are fundamentals that I can't tell you just how good they are to really know inside out. So like even beyond the stuff we're doing here, right? You've got a chord like this. Do you know that chord?
No.
G11, right? Dominant 11. If we think of, sorry, it's A11. Here's G11. Right. A11, right? So A C sharp E, right? Then we get G B D on top. And one way of thinking about that is it's an A triad and a G triad. Yeah? GBD is a G triad. So if you hear this chord, theoretically you could play a G triad against it, and you'll just be playing all the extensions.
Yeah.
If you combine A and G triads, which is what's called triad pairing, then you'll get this kind of which sounds really interesting. Like all you're doing is playing A triad, G triad, A triad, G triad. So you can push these triads ideas, just like with the pentatonics. You know, you don't need to learn a minor 11 arpeggio.
Yeah.
What you need to do is learn what 11s are, and then learn how to use your ear to direct you there, and then think about them in very simple terms, in basic colors. So that way, all you have to really get proficient at is really good at your basic colors.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So we'll treat that minor exercise done for now. The last one that I was running through with the last group was doing DGB, and we're going to climb the neck doing 6 notes in the pentatonic at a time. So we start here in box 4, so sorry, I'll say them in K shape. C shape. Then we go to A shape. Then we go to E shape. Sorry, you call it G shape.
Yeah.
Then E shape.
Oh.
Then D shape. Then, but what's this one?
C again, I think.
Yeah,
Wait.
C again. Yeah. And then we come back down, double up on the top note. D shape. E shape.
Oh.
Then into G shape, then A shape.
Oh.
Oh, E.
Yeah.
then C shape.
Oh,
All right, so it looks like this one might also need a little bit of work across the week. So I'll show you what the exercise would be. If we took, say, 60 beats PM again, knock this off so I can hear it. Then we choose a subdivision. All right, so it could be 16th notes, but more likely at this stage 8ths. So I mean, you were talking to start the lesson about transition, right?
yeah,
Right, like so. You start playing around with the speeds and tempos. Now, eventually, this will build up into kind of like Eric Johnson cascades kind of things. It's kind of a fun descending because it's a good way of moving on the neck. You know, like you can get some cool stuff done that way. What it really focuses on is making sure your position changes are quite clean.
yeah,
And really knowing your scales on the neck. Like we all too often get trapped into boxes and we constantly get locked into thinking about just this box. We don't think about the ones either side. So any kind of exercise you can think of that employ that. So that's a 6s, you could do 5s, you could do, you could just do 2 strings. Hell, you can do 1. And that's sometimes I do that too, where you do like your improv practice, but you're just doing 1 string.
yeah.
Just trying to find out how to make melodies with that. Okay, so because we're like running drastically short on time, I should have been watching the clock more when we were talking about the other stuff. Okay, if we look at the sheet, you got the sheet there?
Yeah, let me just pull it up. Yep.
Okay. Up the top, we have the tetrachord diagram. If you aren't sick of it yet, too bad. Like, keep studying it. I keep it in my head all the time. It is a great way of just figuring out where the distances in a major scale are. It is very important to know the notes across your neck. But I also think it's even more valuable most of the time to just be able to know where the relative position of everything is. Especially on guitar. Now, for sheet reading, music reading, you really do need to know your note names. But you can actually use all of this information to support your reading. If you're reading something in the key of F, no one explained this to me, and I wish they had. If you're reading in the key of F, the first thing you should do is, here's my F scale. And if I see stepwise motion, it's going to follow the F scale, which I've already put a whole bunch of work into learning all over the neck. So I should use that to support my reading.
Yeah.
If I see a third, I know it's going to be a third that is present in the F scale unless there's an accidental.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like it's one of these things where you keep dialing back to kind of try to use all of this information together rather than thinking of them as isolated pockets, which is a mistake I made with sight reading for a really long time. I was taught it that, like, see this note on the page, that's when you play this.
Yeah.
And I found it very difficult, really, really difficult to learn. And as a kid, I learned how to sight read drum score. Like, I couldn't do it anymore, but I'm so far out of practice with sight reading drum score. But the rhythm side of it actually is very processable. And it's the pitch thing that always just make me panic.
Yeah.
Okay, so here up, what we're doing in this first section, we see the music here. We've got first inversion, second inversion, and root inversion. First inversion, second inversion, and root inversion. And I want you to start thinking about them as adding notes to those triads in order to get your pentatonic scale. So if we're talking about your normal triad, 1, 3, and 5, the pentatonic scale also has 2 and 6 in it. So we've got to think, where is a 2 and a 6? One place of finding a 2 would be a tone above 1. Yeah? One place of finding a 6 would be a tone above 5. Does that apply here? Well, here's 5, a tone above. 6, that's nicely, easily fingered. Here's 1, tone above. Right, and now we've made our major pentatonic. Yeah?
Yeah.
So what I want you to do, play your chord first, right? Now play your pentatonic. And end it on your chord. Why? Because one of the things we do when we practice our pentatonics is we always end on notes which don't really blend with the chord because we're practicing fingering. But what
Yeah.
I'm trying to drive home is this association between the way these notes sound around the triad.
Yeah.
Um, so one thing you'll notice, if we end there, it's fairly unresolved. All right? Not too bad because these two are the ones, I mean, like we said last semester, these two are the ones that are kind of always going to work. All right, so up to the next box. Again, so what are the interval orders here?
5, 3, 1. Oh, wait, 3, 5, 1.
Nope. Second
5,
inversion.
5. Wait. 5, 3, 1.
Nope. 5, 1,
5,
3.
1, 3. Yeah.
5, 1, 3. Okay, so here's 5. We can go a tone up again, tone up to 6. Here's 1. We can go a tone up to 2. And a 3. I think in the sheet, just to make everything have 5 notes, I went up to the G as well. Right, that's another data point we can store away. If we're on the 3, if we go up a minor third, we'll be to the 5th. For the major third to minor, if we're on a major third, we go up a minor third interval to get to the 5th. All right. Then we go to root position. Now, here's one instance where going a tone up is going to be weird.
Yeah.
All right. Now, another option, if we look back at that tetrachord diagram, if we're looking for a 2, we could go a tone below 3. Well, here's 3, and here's a tone below. Right, that's a different fingering. That's the one you're more familiar with from box 2.
Yeah.
Right. Now, this is a great opportunity to make some notes. All right, well, a tone on the guitar could be up 2 frets, or it could be up a string and back 3 frets. Except for the GB pair, where it will be only 2 frets, because the GB pair, messes everything up with its third tuning in the middle of that fourth tuning. But one thing to pay attention to is that they don't sound the same, especially if you allow them to ring. All right, that doesn't sound the same as. Especially if you, I don't know how the audio is today. I've got to find a way of making the audio a bit cleaner.
Yeah.
What we're left with is in the first option, we're left with a sus2 sound. Well, it's an add2 sound because we have this 2-3 rubbing against each other. All right, very pretty, very pleasantly dissonant, I think, sound. This way round, we start with the sus2 and we fix it to go major. It's the John Mayer. And it's one of those things that's worth noticing, that the fingerings we choose can dictate the sounds we make, which is why you should also explore, like all of these we did were climbing up from the chord. What if we did them climbing down from the chord? Here we had, but if we did it going down, we'd have those arrangements.
Yeah.
Right? They will suggest different things to your fingers and they allow you to play different things. So you want to kind of explore it and you want to know where you would find these 2 different options. And also start developing a library of maybe why you might choose some of these different options.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to do when we scroll down the page a little bit more, here we're thinking about even less. So if you, last week no one told me, but I actually had the first and second inversions the wrong way around on the sheet. So see if anyone picked that up, actually looking at the sheet over the week. Here what we're doing is thinking about less. All right, we're going to start here in root position. And all I want to think about now is the 6th, because we're trying to develop a map of relationships between this chord shape and these extensions. All right? These are the extensions that we can add all the time. 6 and 9 on a major chord are kind of the least extension-y extension.
Yeah.
Like you're going, over this week, you're going to work on some songs or whatever. If you're playing a plain major chord, try 6, try a 9, and add 9, not a full 9. So here we have the first triad, then we locate those two A's. So the first one, the 6 is going to be a minor third below the root, right? Or, as we know, it's going to be a tone above the 5th. So our two 6s are here, and that's our triad.
Yeah.
All right. So I know you guys are going to do the bebop scale at some point. I can't remember if it was last semester or this semester. But what I've done is written out the arpeggio in a bebop rhythm pattern. So this is real common. So you got an eighth note off an off beat leading into a triplet. 1, 2, 3, 4, up. Right? Just for fun, couldn't help myself. It's a common kind of sound to get used to. Now, one thing that you should play around with is different orders, different ways of playing this. All right, we could play this, right? Nice simple 6th arpeggio. We could what's called pivoting the note, pivoting the arpeggio, which means that we take that 6, we move it up an octave, but we play the same line.
Yeah.
And it sounds really different. Yeah? So you want to play around with them, different orders, different ways of approaching them.
Yeah.
And use them as, as tools when you improvise. So, Yeah. Just play around with them. Okay. Let's come back to first inversion now. All right. So we've got to find the 6 here. There's only one real comfortable location for the 6 at the moment, and that's a tone above the 5. All right. Now, especially back here, it's really easy to notice that what we're actually doing is playing C and A minor.
Yeah.
That's the same as what we're doing here. This is another A minor chord. This.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if you know a guy called Barry Harris.
No.
He's a very, very famous jazz instructor. And he's come up with the Barry Harris method, which is quite an interesting method. Really, really interesting idea globally on how theory and everything comes together. And he does not base it off a scale. He bases it off interesting takes on different ways of dividing up the octave. It's definitely stuff you should look into. He doesn't believe in minor 7th chords. He says minor 7th chords are 6th chords that are inverted. Right? Because, as we just showed, C6 is A minor, right? A minor 7, right? A with a G in it is C.
Yeah.
So there's these really close and strong relationships between the relative major and the relative minor. And that's why underneath this, you might notice I've written out C minor 7 and C minor add 11. And that's because they, on the minor side, are the ways of adding the easiest extensions. One thing that I made a lot of mistakes with was, people say play with your extensions. And that's entirely what I did. Like for most of the time, I would just add an appropriate 7th to a chord. And one thing it took me ages to realize is that if I take a minor chord and I make it minor 7, I actually soften that chord quite a lot. I make it more like a major chord. So I'm actually making that minor chord less minor by doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, it's an interesting idea, is like, where in music do you want to make the minor chord less dramatic, less kind of tugging on your heartstrings? Now, if you want to make it more dramatic, add a 6 or a 9 to it. They invert, right? Like if we added a major 7 does not soften the chord. It actually makes it far more complicated and gives it a dramatic clash, right? Whereas if we take a minor chord and add the 7, that's what we just said, it softens it. But if we add the 9,
that's
so heartbreaking.
That's one chord I like. I think it's the 6/9.
Well, the 6/9, interestingly, that's like a full stop. It's one of these
Yeah.
very restful chords. But a minor 9. So if you have a look at my fingering here, I'm making minor in the bottom and 9 on top.
Yeah.
And no 7, just that. It's tragic sounding, you know. And it's the same if we were going to do a minor 6. A minor 6, that ain't a pleasant chord. You
Yeah.
know, that's a chord that still speaks tragedy.
Yeah.
So this is part of the reason of doing all of these exercises, of thinking about your extensions in this way, of practicing them, is you're making this library of things that you associate with these chords. You know, if I'm playing what's some very simple things I can do to spice that up? Maybe I want to do C6 on the first one and, you know, A minor 7. I think minor 9 here is going to sound very dramatic. Suddenly that 2 chord is a real player in the whole thing. And then if we're going to do that, maybe I want to do something fun with the dominant. Okay, so sorry, back onto the C6 exercise. That's the stuff you should be focusing on while we're doing all this, and
Yeah.
while you incorporate this in your practice. Finding the 6, play the arpeggio, right? Even that by itself, it's like you can almost hear that's like an intro. Ba-da-da-wow. Yeah. For all of that kind of like, I'm playing a major chord. Gives you a little bit of movement that doesn't cost you anything. It's not dramatic enough that it's really going to cause a stir. You know, if I
Yeah.
started doing that with a flat 7, it's like, whoa, that's dramatic. If I do it even with a sus4, it's another really loud statement to make. So these 6s and 9s, very easy to incorporate. Okay, second inversion. All right, so we're going to add in, again, the 6. So we're going to find a location for it. All right, tone above the 5th. Alternatively, we could go a minor 3rd beneath the root. So we could do this one. Yeah. Yeah. And again, using these as a tool. So maybe you set up just a vamp and you go through different positions doing that. Same deal with the 9. Root position. We already discussed this once. This should be nice and easy. Tone above the root.
Yeah.
All right, or...
Oh.
All right. Back in the root. Sorry, first inversion position. Now we got 2 9s pretty easily. D here and D here. So we can get the same old upbeat triplet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
Where are you going?
No.
Oh.
Yeah. Because remember, the deal here is to specifically target only the extension, the 1 extension and the triad.
Yeah.
But
So
we're
not
building
the.
it all out of the pentatonic scale at the moment, but that's all we're targeting.
Yeah.
Okay, onto the minors. All right, we're going to add minor 7. So minor 7. Minor 7 can be found either a minor 3rd above the 5th or a tone beneath the root. Yeah, exactly. That says 1 above the 5th, and here's the root, so a tone down.
Yeah.
Now, because there's 2 of them in this position, I'm doing the bebop rhythm again. 3, 4, 1. Sorry.
Oh.
So I start on the 7, flat 7.
Ah, yeah.
Now, I had not stressed this enough today, but obviously, as you're practicing this stuff during the week, you look at that first one, you go, minor 7, how does that sound? What's the triplet rhythm sound like? Ya ba ba do ba. And make sure that you can sing the notes. Da do ba do ba. You want to practice that all the time.
Yeah.
You know, these days, if you're in the middle of a solo and you're not sure, like you're just jamming yourself and you're not sure where to be, sing the note you hear, and then find that note, right? You
Yeah.
always want to be just trying to reinforce this ear connection stuff. Okay, back to first inversion. Sorry, first inversion for minor. What am I doing? There we go. We can do it here. We can do it down the neck. So we want to add in the minor 7. Well, tone beneath the root. So this is first inversion, so the root's on top. Now this guy's going to look really familiar. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so now we're starting to drive home. All right, so it's that same old connection. This is just a 6 arpeggio. This is the related nature. Okay, to second inversion. All right, tone beneath the roots, probably the easiest one. There you go. Which again, you'll notice is the same old one that we did down here, right? But now we're just doing it on the tonic minor, C minor. Right? So if we actually did these 4 exercises here, these 4 different arpeggios, if we did them all on C major and A minor, they wouldn't look any different.
Yeah.
Yeah? Because if you're doing it on a relative major, relative minor, they will be exactly the same notes. Okay, so at 11, here we're adding the 4, right? Now, interestingly, the 4 in major is essentially an avoid tone if you don't know what to do with it. The 4 has this property where it's like if you play the 4, you must resolve down to 3. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas in minor, it's one of these ones that's like, throw in any time you like. It sounds cool. So 4 is going to be a tone up from the minor third.
Yeah.
Now, again, one of these interesting things, right? So C minor at 11, that looks an awful lot like an F sus, doesn't it? Yeah. This is where you get those confusing talks. I'm sure you've seen them online where some guy's like, oh, I'm playing over these chords. Or you could think of them as these chords or as these chords. And of course we could have these chords. And a lot of the time it's like, actually, we're only just changing one note between all of those different examples anyway. All right, so then we do this in first position. I keep doing this. So again, we're going to be a tone above the third.
Yeah.
Right. It's really good to make sure that you read the notes and you think about them. The note we're looking for always in this instance is F.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, if we were up in this position, again, we learned that that's the add 2, isn't it? That's that add 2 position for the major. So we could do it by falling down beneath the 5th as well. Yeah, so try it on the G string. So if you move that extension on the G, it'll be a tone beneath the note. Right? Same sound doesn't necessarily mean the same thing in different contexts. And finally, for this little exercise, second inversion. And we want the 4, so the 4 is going to be a minor third above the 3. Now, interestingly, in this position, we could get 2 of them. I'm going to do the bebop thing. Starting on the F here and ending on the F here. So there's 2. So we go F and then our triad, and then the F again. Yeah. Okay, so there's some things to add and a new way of kind of thinking. So above that, it's worth going through the sheet a few times and reading some of the little things I've written. The idea is now when you're learning a song, what you want to do is think of these extensions as ones to add. And these will be added to any major or plain minor chord, right? So if it's a minor chord, try the 7, try the 4. If it's a major chord, try the 6, try the 9. It's not always going to work. It's one of these things you're going to have to develop a feel for, but it's worth trying, right?
Yeah.
And these ones are the easiest ones to use. This kind of thinking is kind of a jazz thinking where we're going to divide all chords up for the meantime into major, minor, and dominant. All right, dominant ones are very cool. They get like, the Phrygian dominant scale and like cool kind of like, augmented sounds and stuff. Um, and the majors and minors get different rules. So this is the easy set for both major and minor. Now, if you want
Yeah.
more dramatic options, we're going to look at that in the coming weeks. All right, so in addition to all of this, obviously we want to start talking about how do we use these to make melodies. And a great way of doing some of that, or at least getting an idea of how it works conceptually, is to have a look at some melodies. So if we scroll down the page, I've written a little thing here, which is essentially, here's some basic rules. Resolutions usually occur on the beat, tension off the beat. 1 and 5 are the most solid resolutions, but 3 give the chords basic color, so they're quite important to target too. Notes outside the triad are often used as connections between two different sets of triad notes. If we're going between two chords, we might use a note in between the two of them, right? So let's have a look at this melody, The Nearness of You. Okay, having a look at the anacrusis. You know anacrusis?
Yeah.
Yep. Anacrusis in the first bar, we get C, F, G. Now that's very close. That's a sus2 arpeggio. It's really, really, really close to an F chord. Why don't we play the A? Why not? When we look in the next bar, we find A is the first note of the next bar, and it's like, that's probably why. If we play that A early, we're not building to the downbeat. You actually preempt the note we're going to, and it sounds awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds really basic, but if we plan about this, we're like, I know on this bar, I'm playing A. So it means I've got to avoid it until I hit that note. If I play the A early, unless it's way early, it's going to preempt the sound I'm after, and it's going to make that weaker. So you can see that this line is targeting the A. It's all a build-up to that A. All right, we'll continue. A, C, B flat, A. All right, this tells us a couple of really interesting things. One, they're all from the triad, aren't they? Except for the B flat. The B flat is the 4, and it's immediately followed by the 3.
Yeah.
All right, why? Because the 4 is extremely dissonant, and it creates a lot of motion. If you just play, it's very unresolved. We are waiting for this to happen. Now, why else do we choose the B flat A? Well, if we look at C minor 7, we're playing G over the C minor 7. And B flat A G is stepwise motion that leads us towards the G note on the downbeat.
Yeah.
All right. You can see how you could almost plan this stuff. You could write out your chord changes, write out one note on each chord that you want to go to, and literally look at the steps. How can I step between here?
Yeah.
Now, it's very effective. That B creates a lot of tension. The A resolves it for a second, and then we go to the 7. And the 7 is an excellent color tone. Jazz players will often say, learn to target 7ths and 3rds. Why? Because 7th is extremely descriptive. All right. If it's dominant 7 or if it's major 7, we know an awful lot about the chord. Just like if it's major 3rd or minor 3rd, we know an awful lot about the chord. They're very powerful colors that have very specific rules around them, which is why they're good to target. So we hit G, and then we play B flat again. Sorry, G is. I've been saying that G is the 7th. G is the 5th of only halfway through the coffee. So then we move to B flat, which is the 4th of an F, and you might notice it's held for the first beat of the F, which is just ratcheting tension, right? Because we've got this F7 sus4 that holds for a beat before we then resolve to A, the nice note that we all know that 4 is resolving down to the 3. It's amazing how much you will see this happen.
Yeah.
All right. Now we've changed chord to the B flat major 7. And we hit an F. Now, F is always a good note in the key of F. It's also the 5th of B flat. And again, so F, A, A is the major seventh of B flat, good solid chord tones. G, G is an interesting note. It's a six. Now, like I said before, sixes work, right? But there's probably a reason we played that G. It's going to introduce something else. G to E. That third leap is going to help us keep this musical onto the B flat diminished chord. It's the
Yeah.
fifth. I mean, like saying it's the fifth of a diminished chord is a really interesting concept. It's one of the notes in a diminished chord, and they're all the first, they're all the fifth, and they're all the flat seventh. If you know what I mean, because they're all cyclical minor seven, cyclical minor thirds. This could be a B flat. This could be an E diminished. It could be a G diminished, or it could be a C sharp diminished. Um, it doesn't matter what you call it. They're all the same chord.
Yeah.
Um, it's the same with augmented chords. Augmented chords cycle on a major third, though. Okay. G, back down to the F. F is another good one. A minor with a C in the bass, or C in the, which makes the C soft, right? Like it's
Yeah.
making it kind of, sorry, it's making the A minor softer. It's making it kind of into a C, really. All right. D7, we got nothing. Yeah. All right. Again, G minor 7. Well, D, that's a chord tone. E, it's in the middle of a triplet. It's the least accented or least obvious note in the triplet. And we end on the F. Well, the F is the 7. So you can see how what we're doing is we've taken two chord tones and we've put a note in between, which makes perfect sense for this G minor 7. Then our C7 is going to go G, chord tone, F, the fourth of this particular chord, but the root of the key, and the fourth immediately resolves down to the third of the chord, up to the C, and then we get back to the anacrusis again. So these are concepts we need to borrow when we start thinking of how to start writing, improvising melodies. You know, I actually don't think there's much difference in many ways between improvisation and composition. One's done, um, one's done very, very. Sorry, I just had a text that came in and just blew it totally out of my mind. Sorry, yeah, one's done on the spot and the other one is done planned, right?
Yeah.
Um, so what you've got to do is try to incorporate these into what that you were doing earlier. When you're saying you're practicing over chord progressions, you want to make sure that um, you're doing some of this planning, right? Like you can see, it's always a chord tone, and it always starts the bar on a chord tone. If we hit that four, we've got to resolve it. There's rules that are constantly coming up in this melody, and the more of these melodies you study, the more you're going to see that these things are more and more and more common. So, if we're taking this C, F, and G progression, we make some targets. Like I'm going to go C, F, and then G. Sorry, that's C, and that's going to be the F note, and that's going to be the B note
Yeah.
from G, right? We start with that as a melody. So da 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 da. Okay, and then what you do from there is try to join them. Right?
Yeah.
And that is a great way of really tightening up, one, your chord knowledge, two, your ear, because what we're doing is we've got an enforced melody that we have to hit, and the notes around the scale become filler to target into those notes. Now, it's not that those other notes don't matter. Obviously, they matter a great deal, but right now they kind of don't matter. Right now, you need to think about them as these are my safe locations that I'm trying to run towards, and how I get there will improve the more I do this. I'll have more control in shaping it, the more familiar I get with this kind of process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty, man. So, any questions, queries, statements?
Um, Not really. Just one. Are you gonna, because this has been recording, are you gonna
Yep.
upload this somewhere or
Yes.
yeah, because I might have to have another sort of just watch through
Yeah.
for some of the stuff just to go through
Yeah,
it again.
and like, of course, if you want to have a chat too, um, hit me up. Like, I'm more than happy to chat about this stuff. Um, I've even given some people a couple of free video lessons. Just, they're saying, look, I can't get the stuff on my fingers when I practice. What do I do? And we just have a kind of an individual lesson, kind of like what we did for the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
you know. Um, so yeah. Alrighty. Well, we might cap it off there. I've got someone from my next class who's hitting me up saying they didn't get the link. Um,
Yeah.
I have a strong suspicion that most people don't check their uni emails.
Yeah. That's why I just have it on my phone. So whenever I get an email, it just comes through and I actually look at it.
Yeah, because attendance has been fairly low, and I had a couple people say I had no idea it was on. It's like, well, I texted you about it days ago, like as in
Yeah.
like sent a message out, and surely Claire has told everyone the schedule. Isn't that how it works?
Yeah. And then on the, because in our performance thing, there's a schedule for when everyone is and what time, what day, and whatever.
Yeah. Okay. I also imagine that if people know it's going to be recorded, they might also be,
Yeah.
lazily attending. Like, I was present for my wife's whole uni course. I know that there's plenty of places that she kind of did the eye lecture afterwards instead of doing the thing.
Yeah.
Alrighty, man. Well, yeah, I will. It gets uploaded to the Dropbox for the con. So, if you would you mind just as soon as you log out, send me a quick email to remind me. I'll send out the links again.
Yeah.
The link to the Dropbox.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Hope you do really well with it. Hope you can do
Yep.
some of the stuff over the week or the fortnight. And let me know if you got any problems.
Yep. Thank you.
No worries. My pleasure.
Yeah. Have a good week.
Yeah, you too, man.
Yeah. See ya.
See ya.